Today we're going to go through a little tutorial on how to work towards your V-sit. Some of you might already have an L-sit and you're just working on finding that tip to the V-sit, which is working towards your mana, #goals. Or some of you may have never tried this before. Hand balancing is new to you. So we're going to kind of just go through some basics of it and some little exercises that you can do to work towards it. The V-sit has a lot of things going on. You've got a lot of shoulder strength, be able to push out of your shoulders, be able to keep your elbows locked out and straight. But then adding on to that, in addition, is you then have to find that compression of being able to bring your feet up towards your face, and then that tilt that starts to go into it, okay, that starts taking it towards the mana. So we're going to go through this on the floor. You can go hands on the floor, you can go blocks, you can go canes, parallel bars, this is great on too. It just kind of changes it up. Try it on all of them. Try all the resources that you have and see which one you like best and try them all to challenge yourself. Okay, so let's just go over just to start. First and foremost, I'm using blocks just to demo, but like I said, you can do it on the floor. This floor is a little bit on the squishy side, so if you're on a little bit of a squishy floor, sometimes a hard surface is a little bit easier on the wrists. They tend to fatigue a little bit faster on a squishy floor. So I'm using blocks from Denver Circus Supply. If you're using blocks or canes, 2 fingers go over the tip, and then the other fingers around the edge, okay? So width of your blocks. You're gonna find your own personal preference. Keep in mind, eventually when we go into the V-sit, your hips will start behind the blocks or canes and they have to shift through to get into the V-sit and start to tip. If you're too narrow, depending on the width of your hips, you're gonna have a hard time getting through, okay? So work on finding your ideal width. I find the farther out, the harder it is for me to press into my V-sit, okay? So you're gonna have to find a happy medium of closer so you can get more lift, but not so close that you get stuck and you can't get through. Okay, so let's work our way down on this. So first and foremost is the shoulders. I want to make sure that I'm pushing down out of my shoulders. You don't want to end up with your shoulders hunching up towards your ears. So really think about lengthening this distance here and really depressing the shoulders, okay? Next part is elbows are straight, okay? Oftentimes in the very beginning, doing hand balancing, weight bearing stuff with your whole body, for a lot of people, they tend to buckle, okay? So in the beginning, this might be your whole exercise is just working on this and pushing out of your arms and just kind of slightly weightless in the lower body just to start to develop this muscle, okay? So that would be first. You have to be able to keep the shoulders pressed down, the elbows locked out, because once we start to go into the V-sit, it's a tricep burner. It makes my triceps cramp when I go into a V-sit. So first and foremost, like I said, shoulders, elbows. If you look at it from the side, can work on being here. Either I'm just pushing out here or take it to a sit. You can either put the block straight behind you or right at your hips is fine to start, okay? And then I'm just gonna work on pressing out, okay? Nice and tall, okay? If this is new to you, this might be enough in itself, or start doing little toe taps to work on conditioning that. Next step, as that starts to get comfortable, is to be able to lift the legs. Okay. As we start to lift the legs, now we get into compression, okay? It's being able to keep them tucked in or out here, either one. It's going to require a lot of core muscles, okay? So now we've added on shoulders, elbows. Now we're getting to the abdominals and the core, okay? So starting with this hold, shoulders are stacked, elbows are straight, and I'm going to work on extend, okay? So here's L. Next step to start to tip to that V-sit. I find that it's a lot easier to get into my V-sit if I actually bend my knees, bring them to my chest, and then extend. You'll find you'll oftentimes get a lot more height coming up, okay? If I go here versus here, okay? So play around with that and see if that helps you get a little bit more compression, okay? So this next part of bringing the legs up, I find this compression is an area that a lot of people struggle with. So a good exercise to kind of start conditioning and working in as you're strengthening the shoulders is doing these leg raises. So if these are new to you, start out with singles, okay? Over time, you're gonna progress to both, okay? So like I said, first and foremost, hand position, slightly leaning forward because you want to work on compressing, not leaning back initially, okay? So I just have my fingers gently resting on the ground. So maybe alternate, 5, 10 each side, start to build on that until you can start to lift both and really focus on that compression, okay? Once you start to build that compression just with your butt on the ground, then you can start adding that into your V-sit, Okay, so take it incrementally. Don't try and do everything at once. If that compression is new and just the support hold is new, work on them independently. And as they each start to kind of come together, they'll meet in the middle. Okay, so now let's work on transitioning through to get into that V-sit. Okay, so we've worked on pushing out the shoulders. We've worked on our compression. So we're going to start with the press up into our L-sit and then the shift. Okay, so press up. I'm supported. My legs are raised. I can either bend or straighten, and my hips are going to start to shift as I push. Okay, so I think of pressing back with my arms. It's not just my legs are coming up and I'm folding, because that will tend to make me go forward. I think of my toes to my head, knees to nose, however you want to think of it. And then I think of pressing with my arms, okay? Because my arms are initially by my hips. I want to press away from them to start to raise my hips even farther, okay? So like I said, on these, work on them on the ground initially. Find this compression here, and then over time, that starts to combine with the arms push. Make sure your arms stay completely straight, okay? As soon as they start to bend, that's where you're going to buckle into it, okay? So number one, shoulders, arms, upper torso, okay? Number two, work your compression on the ground. And then as that gets comfortable, work on putting all together to shift. And you will feel these in your arm. Makes my butt cramp, makes my triceps cramp. Try it on the floor, or let's look at it with some canes. So if we're working on our V-sit with a set of canes, same principles as on the ground. If you're using canes, if you're unfamiliar with those, 2 fingers are going to go over the front this way, okay, and then the other fingers are wrapped around the edges. Depending on the width of the canes, these canes are custom made for me width-wise from Denver Circus Supply. So I have mine relatively narrow. Depending on the width of your canes, if they're too narrow, you might have a hard time getting your hips through. Okay, so just take that into account. If you are working on canes versus on the floor, sometimes you're kind of limited by width and where it is. Okay, so if we take this to the canes, after you've already worked on the ground and kind of started to find where the balance is, we're going to start first by transferring the weight to our shoulders, just like we did on the floor. Okay, so start with your hips behind. Okay, and you can see basically arms are stacked straight up and down, my hips are back, I'm leaning forward, just like we did on the ground. When you're ready to start pressing it forward into your L-sit or your V-sit, initially start with your hips in front, and then you can work on threading it through. So I'm going to walk it through. I'm going to get my hands in position. I'm going to sink down and then lifting up one at a time into my tuck. Okay? Over time, as we get that extension, and then the tip. Okay? So initially, just like on the floor, first and foremost is shoulders, then the balance straight, then the balance with the hips in front, and then finding that tip back. As you start to tip back, there's a lot of things that come into play. We've already got the hand balancing part, keeping your elbows locked out, pushing out of your shoulders so you're not sinking. But now as we go into the V-sit and transition, we have that much more of that core, that active flexibility, working on bringing your toes up towards your nose and shifting in the balance. You can see as my hips start to go forward, my upper torso has to tip back, okay? So the goal is to kind of start to tip your body back a little bit, okay? So play around with this V-sit on canes, on the floor, on parallel bars, on blocks, whatever it is that you have. Try it on all of them. It kind of changes it. To me now, I don't feel a huge difference as far as which thing I'm gripping on. But depending on where I am, it varies what other combos I can put in with it. If I'm going to go from a V-sit into like a croc or something like that, sometimes that's hard to do on the ground because I have limited space to bring my legs through, versus if I'm up on canes, I have the option of bringing my legs through. But if the V-sit is new to you, start with it low down, because sometimes there's some balance checks in there, here and there, Okay, so try those out. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. If you're enjoying these tutorials, please share them with a friend. Please subscribe to my channel. If you have any requests for future tutorials, I'd love to hear those too. Go ahead and leave those in the comments as well. And please follow me, YouTube, Instagram at Elizabeth_BFit to get a chance to try out this VSIT. I'd love to see how it goes. So tag me, share it, email it to me, whatever you want to do. Thank you so much for watching.